Well, as we've mentioned, another of the areas that was hoping for more cash in the spring budget yesterday was the armed forces defence spending. Without enough sailors for all of our ships, kit costs soaring, and of course, a war in mainland Europe, you might have thought it would be top of the list. Apparently not so much. The lack of any major support greeted with dismay by a lot linked to the armed forces. Suggestions the military could now see further cuts at a time when a lot of allies are actually rearming. For more on this, I'm joined by military analyst Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon. Thank you. We've discussed before about cuts to defence spending and the state of the army. Hamish, how closely did you watch the budget yesterday and were you disappointed?
Well, I was certainly disappointed because actually what came out was a cut in defence spending. And when you think, the threats to this country are the highest they've been since the Second World War, a lot of this is about perception. Our nuclear deterrent is preventing Putin firing nuclear weapons at us. But our conventional deterrent, our tanks and our aircraft, are hardly that. And when you think that the Russians are spending 30% plus of their GDP on defence, Putin looks across at Europe and across to the UK, and we're spending barely 2%. In his thinking, it means that we don't really care about the defence. And the reason that Putin invaded Ukraine in the first place 2 years ago is because he thought NATO and countries like us wouldn't do anything. He's now making grounds in Ukraine. Grant Shapps, the defence secretary, said only last week that we should be on a war footing. And senior generals in Russia today have said that there is a real possibility of war in Europe. So all of these things added together, and I know that there's so many other pressures on the budget. Actually, if we get this wrong, the Tories might not be able to kick this into the long ground, into whoever is next. If we get it wrong, quite everything else could pale into insignificance.
Yeah, we had John Sweeney here in the studio this week, who's been reporting from Ukraine for the last 2 years, and he highlighted the importance of munitions factories needed in Europe to counter what North Korea is supplying to Russia. I mean, these are major investments that are needed to counter that aggression. In terms of what you would spend money on then, Colonel, if you had the unlimited budget of, say, a 2.5% defence spend budget, where would you focus the funding?
Well, I would focus it on what I'd call the conventional deterrence, something that Putin, and we're really only concerned with Putin. I know there's a lot of dreadful things going on in the Middle East, but they are not directly affecting this country. So Putin really looks at strength. And one thing that we've seen in Ukraine is that mass still matters. That's numbers. Putin has thousands of tanks, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, whereas we have very, very few. I mean, it's heartening that Sweden today has joined NATO. If you look at the Swedes and the Finns, they have massive armies. Most of them are what we would call sort of citizens' armies. People are trained to be able to come and fight. But they also invest in that hardware, that conventional hardware, tanks and aircraft. And I think the fact that, 33 years ago, almost to the day, I was a young tank commander in the first Gulf War, and we put, over 150 tanks in to get rid of another tyrant, Saddam Hussein, who illegally invaded a sovereign country. Whereas today, we would be really pushed to put even a third of that onto the ground. So I think we need to re-look at the capabilities, because some of the ones we've invested in over the last few years are for a war that doesn't exist, certainly not now and not in the near future. So I would like to see some more hardware. And as you've already said, we need to get more people into the military. There's not a shortage of people wanting to join. It's just been made so very difficult for them. So I think it's something that we need to look at very carefully and very quickly, because war might come to Europe rather quicker than we expect, and we will absolutely have to be involved in it.
And of course, Labour still polling far ahead of the Conservatives. So say they do win the next general election, how reassured are you that they will put appropriate funding to defence?
Well, I think they're going to have to, because if we have to commit forces, if there is war in Europe, this is going to affect the whole nation, the whole of Europe, and we're going to be all in. I think, Labour actually have been saying some reasonable things about defence, and traditionally, Labour have funded defence pretty well. Now, I agree that the MOD have probably not spent their money too wisely over the last few years, so that's something that needs to be sorted out. But it all goes back to perception and a credible conventional deterrence, so that the main tyrant at the moment, Putin, looks at us and thinks, right, I'm not going to go any further. I'm going to stop here. But at the moment, he sees us as a speed bump. And if anybody thinks he'll stop in Ukraine, they're in for a big shock.
Military analyst Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, thank you as ever.